Is Ukraine continuing its march into Robotyne and Staromayorsk as well as Bakhmut? And what does it mean for Russian morale? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's August 21st, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, we're taking a look at the control map. We have Robotyne here, and you can see in the last 24 hours or so, Ukrainian forces doing pretty much exactly what we predicted, right? Repositioning somewhat on the flanks and then driving Russian forces out of the territory, right? You can see them advancing, taking control up to this line here, controlling almost the majority of the town at this point. When we look, we also have some changes near Staromayorsk, right? Looking over here, you can see that Ukrainian forces, again, trying to put pressure probably on this Russian salient. This is a tough spot for Russian forces. So you can see they've retreated behind this canal here, or this river here. And so to dig them out, it seems like Ukrainian forces want to push this way in an effort to cut them off. You can see there's not really a road or a clear route out of here. And these forces are likely going to become trapped. And some of them may try to cross this river here to get to Priutine. Some may flee across this open ground. But this is a very dangerous spot for Russian troops. Again, I think after the high casualties Ukrainian forces were able to inflict when Russian forces retreated in panic out of Odozane, I think inflicting a similar level of damage to these troops may achieve a comparable effect, i.e., forcing them to feel like they are surrounded on all sides, which they almost are, forcing them to drop their weapons in panic, and then punishing the panicking troops as they try to make it back to friendly lines. And with no cover, no concealment, and not even a roadway, the potential for devastation is pretty substantial. So I think that's part of the Ukrainian plan here. It's probably also to stabilize the flanks around Staromayorsk, right? You can see Orozane. There's a significant Russian forces have been pushed back quite a bit, right? The flanks are pretty stable. This is just a little bit more narrow and a little bit more angular. So, forcing Russian forces back, giving Staromayorsk a little bit of a buffer zone, probably for the best. But I'd be very curious to see if Russian forces trying to hold on to this area also end up in a similarly punishing withdrawal. The final, of course, adjustment over near Bakhmut in Andriivka, we can see here that this small, to the north of Andriivka, we're seeing Ukrainian forces try again to isolate and flank the remaining Russian forces trying to hold on to Andriivka. You can see that the Russian forces are attempting to, again, restabilize along this canal line, this natural defensive line that will be pretty tough to break, but they're trying to use Andriivka as a strong point. But I think given that Ukrainian forces can sit there and achieve up to 3 sides of pressure, means that this small town, it's just not large enough to really establish meaningful defensive efforts. I think they're going to get crushed pretty badly, and you're going to see Russia withdraw from Andriivka in short order. This also, of course, you may notice, it isn't exactly a great look for Klachivka, but I think Ukrainian forces are focused first on driving them back to Andriivka, and then they'll probably try to run a similar playbook in Klachivka, forcing Russian forces against this barrier here, or even forcing them into it and then annihilating them. So I think overall we're seeing a real steady progress from Ukrainian forces. I think the most telling part of it is that Russian forces are kind of in retreat, not a totally disordered retreat, but along 3 major axes. When we look over at the combat map, we can see again there is a real gap in Russian batteries here along this Robotyne axis. You can see 4 hours ago, Ukrainian forces reporting additional success southeast of Robotyne and south to Tokmachka, which again to me is indicative of Ukrainian forces really trying to reposition again, trying to advance along the flanks and then use that flank pressure to drive out Russian forces. That seems to be a playbook they're running repeatedly. Advance along a flank, use that to become use the front line here, in this case, the northern flank, to be their base of fire, and then you advance and either use fire or literal light infantry to push out Russian forces. But you can see here, again, this is almost block by block accurate to the control map that Ukrainian forces are controlling just about this like center line of the town. So a good sign, again, I think a positive sign. I think the biggest takeaway again from all this is that Ukraine has sort of a fixed playbook they're running, which we haven't really seen them establish yet, right? They tried to run this NATO strategy. It didn't really work, and it's not been clear how they are approaching this. But I think this flank and push and flank and push can be a really, really effective playbook, similar to how Russia used the assault tactics, right? Where they would in taking places like Soledar and Bakhmut, they would use preparatory fires and then have light infantry advance in a frontal assault, preparatory fires, light infantry advance. It's a high casualty method, certainly, but it was effective for the Russians, and they were able to go back to the playbook again and again. They weren't like groping in the dark for a strategy. And if Ukrainian forces can find something that they can use similarly, a playbook they can go back to again and again, but without taking such considerable casualties like Russia did, it could be a real game changer for them. As you can see here, Russian forces launching 25 combat engagements, pretty limited in number, just almost none being reported in Zaporizhzhia, just in Donetsk, outside of Bakhmut and Kurdyumivka, and in the north, which is interesting. And again, I think a really bad sign for Russian morale in the southern part of the country. Now, guys, if you're interested in seeing some of the videos from these combat engagements, I can't show them here. I can't do my analysis here. I do it all on combatvetnews.com. This is my site, where if you want to become a member, any one of these tiers is going to get you access to the members only content, and the exclusive room on the Discord. It's the way to support the channel, and it's the only way. I actually, the videos we do deep dive analysis of, they're like on the ground combat videos. They give us insights we can't get anywhere else, but they can be pretty intense. I can't even show the thumbnails without getting demonetized. So if you're interested, go to combatvetnews.com. Well, when we look at the ISW, now bear in mind, the ISW has been saying that Russian morale is at an all-time low for months now. And it seems to be broadly accurate. But there are one Russian mill blogger is reporting that in Zaporizhzhia, Russian forces are facing issues with their counter battery capabilities, meaning that while Ukraine doesn't have air superiority, they appear to have indirect fire artillery superiority, with Russia's counter batteries unable to return fire, meaning that Russian units are just taking rounds again and again. Russian units supposedly are also facing officer shortages due to manpower losses, and that privates command some Russian companies, which normally should have a junior officer in command. So that's sort of telling right there. Right. And of course, Ukrainian strikes against Russia in deep rear areas are also generating discontent in the information space and degrading the morale of Russian forces in Ukraine, which on a long-term timeline may threaten their ability to defend, right? And we've sort of seen it now. It seems as though Russian forces, even though Ukrainians aren't staging major breakthroughs, Russian forces seem more brittle. They seem like they're breaking and retreating much more frequently, much more easily. And that's because, again, morale is impacted by being able to receive a regular supply of food, water, munitions. ISW speculating that there could be a general panic if pressure happens. I think that's what you saw in Otozane. I really think these were troops that were panicking and fleeing. They weren't in conducting a retreat in good order. So it seems like it's very possible that this damage on morale is directly contributing to Ukrainian battlefield success. Right. And at some point, of course, Ukraine has to degrade Russian morale to a breaking point, but nobody really knows when that is. And they say, oh, these morale issues will not matter if Russian forces do not break under this pressure. I don't think that's true. I think that it's not a binary. Soldiers fight hard. It's not like soldiers fight at 100% effectiveness, or if their morale is low, it drops to panic and retreat. I think we're seeing it now. Russian forces are much more brittle. Their defenses seem less tenacious. They are block by block being pushed out of Robotyne. I suspect we'll see that town liberated in probably 3 days, 72 hours max. And the more this happens, right, the more Russian forces are continually pushed back, the more their morale is broken. Again, the easier it'll be when you're in that critical moment, right? There's a critical moment in a fight where the momentum can go either way. And in that moment, right, that's when soldiers have to harden and they have to dig in and they have to push back against the enemy. And if you're hungry, if you're tired, if you're not confident that there'll be munitions and medical supplies behind you, consciously or unconsciously, you're less likely to fight quite as hard. And that is a part of the Ukrainian strategy, and I think it's already paying dividends. I don't think ISW is right to say that morale degradation in Russian forces is only relevant if they totally panic and retreat. I just don't think that's correct. Anyway, the other big news, of course, is Netherlands and Denmark committing to transferring F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine, but there's no specified timeline. And as you guys know, timing is everything in this war. And without a timeline, a promise with no timeline attached to it isn't really a promise at all. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. I want a special shout out to our Colonel tier members and, of course, our Lieutenant tier members. I appreciate you guys and everyone who is a member at Combat Vet News. I really couldn't do this without you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.